it is with reluctance then that I ask you about the media and the treatment of Donald Trump. But you yourself have remarked on it in your column. And so I want to talk about the jetliner view of the normalization of Trump. I mean, this guy is an insurrectionist. I mean, he attempted a coup. He is you can say he's unhinged. He's not tethered by any kind of understanding of this is more sort of who the man is. But I think sort of from where I sit, he is just completely disqualified for public service. But what is also clear is that as his inanities build up, as the craziness of things he says build up on the stump, that also is sort of washed away by the media in general. Now, I've given you a lot to comment on, but I just wonder if you could take a crack at some of that.
Yeah, sure. Well, over the last couple of weeks, I've learned a new term, and the term is sane-washing. Have you heard this term?
Exactly.
Yes,
exactly what I'm talking
about. This is the process of the press sort of, trying to claim that there's sort of rationality in Trump's, blithering. And, the first example that I wrote about was this bizarre spiel he went on a week or so ago about how, pupils are leaving their homes and going to school and coming back having, having suffered surgeries, gender-changing surgeries. And he aired this, as far as I can tell, the first time in an interview with Moms for Liberty, which is this book burning or book banning outfit that originated in Florida. And he went to their convention and he said, this is what's going on. This is horrible. And it was just, you listen to it, you said, this is not, as I wrote, we have a rule here at the LA Times that we're not supposed to use terminology that, that relates to mental illness and apply it to people who we don't know for sure are mentally ill. And I wrote, look, let's be serious. This is something that's going on here that we need to comment on. And when I looked at how the other newspapers, including our own, which use an Associated Press dispatch, described what he said, it was just like no relationship between what he said and what they purported that he said. I mean, they said, well, he looked for, he mentioned some policies on gender discrimination. There was nothing like that. It was just this bizarre spiel. And then, there was another case, on Friday, I think, where he was appearing before the Economic Council of New York City, which is basically a collection of bankers and financiers, and was asked a question about what he would do about the rising cost of childcare. And he went on this completely unhinged rant about, how, he was going to make other countries pay taxes to the United States and this and that. But as I noticed, he had made mention at the very beginning of his answer, he had sort of name dropped Marco Rubio and Ivanka, his daughter, and that clicked on me. And I said, I know what he's talking about, because I wrote 2 or 3 columns about this idea that Ivanka and Rubio had back in 2018 or 2019 about allowing families to pay for family leave when they got a new child, either, gave birth or adopted, but that they would pay for it by giving up some of their Social Security when they retired. And I wrote at the time that this was just nuts. It was bad for the families. It was bad for Social Security. It was bad in terms of retirement policy. And I speculated that I didn't think that Trump even knew what he was talking about. He sort of had this recollection in the dim recesses of his mind that he dredged up to say, oh yeah, Rubio and Ivanka had some idea. Anyway, the press goes on and they are like desperately searching for, some sort of rational nuggets in what he says, and there are none. And And this has been bad, I think, for the country to sane wash a guy who really is crazy.
Yeah, I love that you pointed out in your column at the time the uh, real trail of breadcrumbs you could find back to some sort of policy that was talked about, the kind of borrowing against Social Security if you want time off, if you want to think of it
Yeah,
that
and
way.
in fact, of course, he wasn't even talking about childcare, which is something that families have to pay for, for their children to raise their children into adolescence. This proposal that he had dredged up was about family leave, for maybe 6 or 12 months at a time when the baby is brand new. So, it's, for reporters at the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal to basically translate that or transliterate that into, oh yeah, Trump had this idea and this is how he answered. He didn't answer it at all. And in fact, the woman, the lawyer who had asked him that question, went on Twitter and said this was an insulting response from him. He didn't answer the question. He just, was out in left field. So.
Well, he was,
Anyway,
and
it's bad.
the way in which he worked his way back to an applause line, that was very much Trumpian as well. I mean, he has the sense for the room, and you even mentioned the sense for the room that he had when he's talking to Mothers for Liberty or whatever. When he'll go hard right in front of Mothers for Liberty, he'll go wish-washy on women's reproductive rights when he's playing in sort of to a general audience. But the idea of his incoherence being washed, the sane washing that way. That's a real thing. I mean, and I like that you pointed that out, Michael Hiltzik. The idea somehow that you can cherry pick quotes from a blithering incoherence, and somehow if you just then talk about that from the perspective of different pundits weighing in on that quote, all of a sudden it makes it sound like you're talking about Trump policy.
Yeah, he could put words together into sentences that have sort of a distant relationship to grammatical truth. But ChatGPT does that too, and it's not intelligent. Even though it's called artificially intelligent. But and I think that's why the Harris campaign or the Harris-Walz campaign, had their finger on what's going on here when they tried to insist that his microphone when he wasn't, answering a question would be live at the debate tomorrow because I think they were counting on him just, going off on a tangent and misbehaving. And I think we may yet see that. And it'll be interesting to see what the press, I think we can assume that he's just going to go off the deep end on one thing or another during the debate. And it'll be interesting to see if the press tries to sugarcoat this or sane wash it when, 30 million people will have watched it.
Yeah, he is capable of turning it up and turning it down. I always caution on this show, and I get a lot of blowback. I just think he is comfortable in front of those cameras and riffing around, and he'll get enough help with the spinsters and the right-wing media, which dominates this country, despite the notion that the mainstream media is liberal. I think he's worked the refs well. I think the mainstream media, we just talked about it, the sane washing has a lot to do with the mainstream media and major newspaper outlets that lead the rest of mainstream media a lot of the time. Over the weekend, he said this stuff about removing immigrant gangs, and that's going to be a bloody story. He packed his comments over the weekend with a lot of stuff. One is that. Another is the recriminatory posture that he poses toward people who are his adversaries, right? He's basically saying, hey, all of you who work at polling stations or in charge of elections and all of you in the media, when I win, you are all going to face prosecution. I mean, that's just it's an insane posture that he's taken. But both those stories have floated to the surface from his weekend statements.
Yeah, absolutely. And the press does not give the flavor of what he's saying, what he's talking about, and maybe there's hope that he'll be off the leash tomorrow night. But I think our reporters and editors really need to do a better job than I mean, they haven't done a good job at all
So
covering him. And, I mean,
yeah.
it may be that, political reporters are eternally searching for, a reason for their lives, to say, well, we're covering something. We're covering a debate among policies, but, there's no policy coming from the Trump administration, from the
Underdog
Trump
is saying
campaign.
this, and Pulitzer winner Michael Hiltzik will be called upon to respond. The mainstream media relentlessly criticized Biden for his mistakes, but never held Trump accountable for his numerous lies. It did seem like there was an asymmetry to everything, Michael Hiltzik.
I think that's true. The press certainly jumped on Biden for his performance at the first debate. Um, And it was certainly, not great, but, Trump was absolutely incoherent when he had the microphone during that debate. And it just, seemed to go over the heads of the reporters covering that. And, I think voters are simply not getting a sense of how unhinged he is, now more and more. I mean, you can look at how he was, in 2020 or 2016 and now, and it's clear that there's been a serious decline in his mental acuity.
So as we look at tomorrow night, the I'm actually figuring, and look, this might be wrong. I mean, and you kind of noted, look, maybe the guy goes off with, this violent, incoherent rhetoric tomorrow night, but I don't think so. I think he's not this loose cannon within certain situations that we think him to be because we see him in other situations. If it plays to a kind of a draw, I feel as though then we just end up where you get what you want from it. Your guy, generically, your guy won based on whatever. We'll all cherry pick those things that we feel are most important. I feel as though, and again, I have nothing except just the general sense I feel that he's being underestimated. Maybe she's being overestimated a bit because she's a prosecutor and all these. I think she's extremely capable and competent. Don't get me wrong, but I just think that I feel like it's playing toward a draw tomorrow night.
Well, who can tell? I mean,
Right, right.
anything can happen. I think she'll be cogent and intelligent, and she may try to needle him into an outburst because clearly he has a problem with control. But we'll see if he can really stay. It'll be interesting to see if he can stay on the straight and narrow. I think Democrats, Harris, everybody is hoping that he'll show, he'll behave like he always is. But when he's out in public and giving talks, these crazy ideas and this crazy verbiage sneaks in every time. So we'll see if he can, keep it in check tomorrow.
One of the things they did, and I'll let you go, but I just am remembering the last debate on ABC. I thought this was a really lame thing they did, and it was not talked about anywhere. They did this thing where after Biden spoke and after Trump spoke as well, but usually after Trump spoke, they said, sir, you still have, a minute and 10 seconds left and you haven't answered the question. There was that sort of the suggestion that you haven't addressed it. Do you want to say something more? With Biden, they said, sir, you still have 50 seconds left on the clock if you want to say something more. I thought that was lame because I'm really looking for the candidates to share their thoughts, make their statements, whatever. I'm not looking for it to necessarily fill the time of 2 minutes. I mean, it seemed like a poor exercise in whatever, that they were running a clock and saying, Mr. Hiltzik, you still have 15 more seconds if you want to, so he took 1:45 instead of 2 minutes, whatever. I'm just hoping that the television part of things doesn't blunt our ability to get to know these people to the extent that we can in this artificial environment.
Well, what I'm hoping for, and I know I am not going to get it because I've seen this, these sorts of debates go on over and over again when they are being moderated by media stars, as tomorrow's will be, is that the moderators try to be polite to both sides and even-handed. If you compare that to the way, you see candidate debates go on in local local races where there's a local journalist who really knows his or her stuff, or if you see debates from overseas in the UK or Australia, what have you, the moderators there really hold the candidates feet to the fire. They do not let them get away with anything. And in this case, I mean, maybe Harris will be better at exposing Trump's lies and misstatements, when her mic is on. But it really should be up to the moderators to, to hold both candidates to a standard, and we just do not see that in American debates.
Yeah, it is true. And there's sort of a, what is this? It will be a Trump center of attention circus again, and his polling will go up because they love the lies he spews, says Mindy. This is interesting from Rob. Don't call them moderators, they're observers. I think this is what Michael Hiltzik's point is, isn't it, Michael? That, you're in the American media sphere, your slavish fealty to neutrality makes you sort of loath to call anybody out on anything, and it's really frustrating. So anyway, look, I love that we've reconnected. This love affair is way on again, and again, I'll remind everyone that Michael Hiltzik, the Pulitzer Prize-winning writer for the LA Times, and I went to the same university, which makes me Pulitzer Prize adjacent. Thank you very much. I look forward to your writing, and we'll talk again. And the book, of course, coming in February, Golden State, The Making of California. Thanks again, Michael Hiltzik.
All right, anytime.
All right, talk soon. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.